Hey, tonight we explore the forgotten art of Ottoman tree training, where master gardeners coaxed living wood into impossible shapes. In the imperial gardens of Constantinople, beneath skies stained amber by setting suns, these artisans whispered secrets to saplings. Their practiced hands guided growth with gentle persistence, year after year, until nature yielded to vision. Tonight, you'll feel rough bark beneath your fingertips, smell soil warmed by Mediterranean heat, and witness the patient dedication of craftsmen whose canvas was time itself. Their techniques, lost to modern horticulture, transformed ordinary trees into living sculptures that symbolizes eternity and the divine mysteries. This forgotten craft, passed from master to apprentice for centuries, awaits rediscovery through your eyes. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What dreams have you been nurturing that require patience like these gardeners had? Find a quiet corner where interruptions cannot follow. Draw the curtains halfway, leaving only filtered light to dance across your space. Wrap yourself in something soft, something that feels like a gentle embrace. Take 3 deep breaths, each one slower than the last, and allow your mind to drift backward through centuries, to gardens where time itself was sculpted into living art. You wake before dawn, your small room in the Imperial Gardens dormitory, still shrouded in darkness. The thin wool blanket scratches against your skin as you push it aside, careful not to disturb the other apprentices slumbering nearby. Today marks your 16th birthday, but more importantly, it is the day master, Ibrahim, will finally begin teaching you the sacred art of tree spiraling. For 3 years, you have swept paths, hauled water, and mixed soil, watching from a respectful distance as the master gardeners work their magic on the Sultan's prized trees. The wooden floor creaks beneath your feet as you dress quickly in the darkness. Your fingers find the rough cotton of your gardening tunic, worn soft from washing, and the leather vest that protects you from thorns and branches. Around your waist, you tie your apprentice's belt, dyed blue to mark your rank, and secure your grandfather's pruning knife in its sheath. The knife, passed down through 3 generations of gardeners, has a handle of polished olive wood, smooth and comforting against your palm. Outside, the air carries the scent of dew-dampened earth and night-blooming jasmine. Stars still prickle the sky above Istanbul, though they pale as the first grey light seeps over the horizon. The massive walls of Topkapi Palace rise around you, and within them, the sacred space of the Sultan's private garden, where only the most trusted servants may enter. Your sandals whisper against the stone path as you make your way to the tool shed. Master Ibrahim stands waiting, his silhouette framed by the doorway. Though well past 60, his back remains straight as the cypress trees that line the palace walls. His beard, once black as a raven's wing, now flows white as winter snow to his chest. His hands, those remarkable hands that can coax trees to dance, are gnarled like the wood they have manipulated for decades. "You are punctual," he says, his voice low and gravelly from years of morning prayers. Good. The art of tree spiraling begins with understanding time. Trees do not recognize our human urgency. To them, a decade is but a moment of growth. You bow slightly, hands folded before you in respect. "I am ready to learn, master." He studies your face for a long moment, as if reading the quality of soil. "Are you? 3 years you have worked the basic tasks. Tell me, what have you observed about the spiral-trained plum tree near the eastern fountain?" The question takes you by surprise, but you've spent countless hours studying that particular tree. while pretending to rake leaves nearby. Its main trunk completes 3 full clockwise rotations before the first major branch. The spiraling follows. The path of the sun and copper wire guides its youngest branches, though the wire is removed before it can cut into the growing wood. The lower spirals are wider than those near the top, creating a tapering effect that draws the eye upward. Like a minaret, something like approval flickers in Ibrahim's dark eyes. And why do we train the trees thus? Is it merely to please the Sultan's fancy? You consider carefully before answering. The spiral represents the soul's journey to Allah. As the tree reaches toward heaven, it turns in remembrance, never forgetting its path, just as we turn toward Mecca in prayer. Ibrahim nods slowly. There is hope for you yet. Come. He leads you deeper into the garden, past fountains where water sings softly in the growing light, through groves of fruit trees standing in perfect rows. The Sultan's private sanctuary is a paradise on earth, a reflection of Jannah promised in the holy texts. Here, every plant, every stone, every drop of water has been arranged according to divine principles. You arrive at a small nursery area hidden behind a wall of cypress. Young saplings stand in clay pots, their tender trunks barely thicker than your thumb. Ibrahim gestures toward one slender cherry tree. This will be your first student, he says. You will teach it to dance, and it will teach you patience. He demonstrates how to examine the sapling, his weathered hands moving with surprising gentleness. Feel its strength, he instructs. Each tree has its own character, its own willingness to bend. Some fight more than others. This is not unlike teaching children. Some require a firm hand, others respond to the lightest touch. You place your hands where his were, feeling the smooth young bark, the subtle give of living wood. The sapling seems to pulse with life beneath your fingertips, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine you can feel the slow surge of sap rising from roots to leaves. Now watch, Ibrahim says. From his vest, he produces a coil of thin copper wire and a roll of soft cotton strips. The wire guides, but should never cut. The cotton protects. Remember, we are not forcing the tree against its nature. We are showing it a new way to grow. There is a difference. With practiced precision, he wraps the cotton around sections of the trunk, then applies the wire in a perfect spiral pattern. His fingers move with such certainty that the wire seems to flow from his hands like water. Too tight, and the tree will die. Too loose, and it will ignore your guidance. You must feel the balance. He steps back. Now you try. Remove my work. And begin again. Your heart pounds as you carefully unwrap his perfect example. The responsibility weighs on you. This living thing will carry the mark of your hands for decades to come. With slightly trembling fingers, you begin to wrap the cotton padding. No, Ibrahim says immediately. You are thinking of the wire, not the tree. Feel its future growth. Where will branches emerge? How strong is this section compared to that one? The tree is not a dead thing to be bent, but a living partner in creation. You take a deep breath and start again, this time closing. Your eyes for a moment to sense the subtle differences in the sapling's trunk. There, a slightly thicker section that suggests a future branch. There, a more flexible portion that will bend more readily. Under Ibrahim's watchful eye, you work through the morning. Your first attempts are clumsy, and he makes you restart 12 times. The sun rises fully, casting dappled light through nearby mulberry leaves. Palace servants move quietly along distant paths. Occasionally, the calls of muezzins float over the garden walls, reminding the faithful to pray. By midday, your back aches and your fingers are raw, but the sapling stands with its first training spiral in place. It is not perfect, not nearly as elegant as Ibrahim's work, but the young cherry tree now begins a journey that will continue long after both you and Ibrahim have returned to the earth. It will do for a beginning, Ibrahim says, which from him is high praise indeed. Now you must understand how to maintain the guidance as the tree grows. He leads you to progressively older trees, each in a different stage of training. One has been growing in its spiral for 3 years and requires careful adjustment of its guiding wires. Another, nearly 10 years old, has internalized its spiral pattern, its trunk grown thick around the guidance, the wire long since removed. See how the older trees hold their shape without assistance. Ibrahim gestures to a magnificent spiral-trained plum tree that must be 30 years old. That is the true art, not to force, but to suggest so convincingly that the tree believes the spiral is its own idea. You spend the afternoon learning to adjust support systems, to relocate wires before they bite into growing bark, and to prune selectively to encourage growth in the desired direction. Ibrahim shows you how to speak to the trees, not with words, but with touch. How to listen to them, not with ears, but with patient observation. As the sun begins its descent, Ibrahim leads you to a secluded corner of the garden where a twisted, wooden chest rests beneath a towering spiral pine. The pine's trunk completes 7 perfect turns before branching into a canopy that filters the golden afternoon light. From his belt, Ibrahim produces a heavy iron key and opens the chest. Inside, nestled on faded silk, lie the tools of the master tree trainer. There are special curved blades for precise pruning, copper wires of varying thickness, wooden splints, and ancient texts with diagrams showing the mathematics of the perfect spiral. These have been passed down since the time of Sultan Mehmed, the Conqueror, Ibrahim says solemnly. Each master adds to the knowledge, improves the technique. He lifts a weathered leather journal. Here are my observations from 50 years of practice. He opens the journal to reveal pages of meticulous notes and sketches. Diagrams show the precise angles of spirals, calculations for different tree species, observations on how various woods respond to training. Some pages show trees that failed, their trunks split or growth stunted, with annotations explaining the errors. One day, if Allah wills it, you will add your own wisdom to this book, he says. But first, you must master the fundamental patterns. From another compartment in the chest, he removes a roll of parchment. Unfolded, it reveals complex geometric diagrams, circles within circles, lines intersecting at precise angles. The mathematics of beauty, Ibrahim explains. The same divine proportions found in the spiral of a seashell, in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, in the path of stars across the heavens. We do not invent these patterns. We discover what Allah has written into the fabric of creation. You study the diagrams, marveling at their complexity, the precise ratios between spiral segments, the careful calculations that ensure the tree will remain balanced as it grows. This is no simple garden craft. It is science, art, and devotion intertwined. Tonight, you will copy these diagrams, Ibrahim instructs. Your hand must learn them so thoroughly that you could draw them in darkness. The eye may be fooled, but the hand remembers. As twilight deepens, servants light oil lamps along the garden paths. Ibrahim leads you to a small pavilion where a low table awaits, prepared with ink, quills, and sheets of parchment. Before you begin, He gestures for you to wash your hands in a nearby basin. The water is scented with rose petals, turning the mundane act of cleaning into a ritual of purification. Clean hands, clear mind, Ibrahim murmurs. Now you are ready to receive knowledge. For hours, you copy the sacred geometries, your back growing stiff, your eyes straining in the lamplight. Ibrahim watches silently, occasionally correcting the angle of your wrist or the pressure of your quill. The night deepens around you, cool air carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers and distant cooking fires from beyond the palace walls. Enough, Ibrahim finally says, when your 10th copy approaches the perfection he demands. Tomorrow you will begin to understand how these lines translate to living wood. The following day begins before dawn again, but this time, Ibrahim leads you beyond the gardens to a hillside where wild trees grow. Here, no human hand has guided their growth, yet some have naturally formed spiraling patterns in response to sun and wind. Nature already knows the sacred geometries, Ibrahim explains. We merely emphasize what is already written in the tree's desire to grow. Look there. He points to a pine whose trunk twists subtly as it reaches skyward. That tree spirals not because someone trained it, but because it follows the sun's daily path. Our art is to enhance this natural tendency with mathematical precision. You spend the morning observing wild trees, learning to see the subtle patterns in their growth. Ibrahim teaches you to read the history of each tree, to see how it responded to storms, droughts, abundant years in the rings of its cut branches. A tree remembers everything, he says, holding up a cross-section of branch. Here, 7 years ago, a great drought. See how the rings grow close together. And here, 3 years ago, abundant rain. The rings grow wide and strong. When we train a tree, we become part of its memory. The words settle deeply within you. To become part of a living memory that will outlast your own life. There is something profound in this thought. Back in the imperial gardens, Ibrahim takes you to the oldest spiral-trained tree in the Sultan's collection, a magnificent cedar whose massive trunk completes 12 perfect spirals before branching into a canopy that seems to touch the sky. This tree was begun by my master's master, Ibrahim says quietly. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent would sit beneath it and compose poetry. The tree was already old then. You stare up at the living monument, trying to grasp the patience required to create such perfection. Centuries of careful tending, generations of gardeners guiding each year's growth. The scale of time is humbling. How do you begin such a work knowing you will never see its completion, you ask? Ibrahim smiles, the deep lines around his eyes crinkling. That is precisely the lesson the trees teach us. Our human lives are brief sparks, but we are part of something greater. The gardener who began this cedar did so as an act of faith. Faith in Allah's plan. Faith in the generations to come who would continue the work. Over the following weeks, your education intensifies. Each day begins with prayer, followed by practical work with your cherry sapling and other trees in various stages of training. Ibrahim teaches you to mix special clay poultices that help trees heal when their bark is damaged. You learn to read the subtle language of leaves, how their position and color reveal the tree's health and responses to your guidance. In the afternoons, you study the ancient texts of Ottoman horticulture, memorizing passages about soil preparation and the optimal seasons for beginning training with different species. You learn which trees are most amenable to spiral training: flexible young elms, stately cypresses, fruit trees whose wood remains supple even as they age. One text, written 2 centuries earlier, describes how the patterns used in tree training mirror those found in Islamic calligraphy and architectural decoration. The same divine proportions appear throughout creation, a secret harmony that connects all things. As you trace these patterns with your finger, something shifts in your understanding. The garden is not merely a collection of plants, but a living manuscript written in green ink. Ibrahim watches your progress carefully, his criticism gradually, giving way to quiet nods of approval. Your hands grow stronger, more confident. You develop calluses where the pruning tools press against your skin, badges of your developing craft. One evening, as you adjust the training wires on your cherry sapling, Ibrahim arrives with a visitor, an elderly man in the rich robes of a court official. You immediately stand and bow deeply, recognizing the Grand Vizier himself, the Sultan's most trusted advisor. "This is the boy you spoke of?" the Vizier asks Ibrahim. "Yes, Excellency." He shows uncommon promise. The Vizier studies you with shrewd eyes. The Sultan has commissioned a special project for his daughter's wedding garden. 40 spiral-trained fruit trees, arranged according to the pattern of stars visible on the night of her birth. It must be completed within 5 years. Ibrahim bows. "A challenge worthy of our craft, Excellency. My apprentice will assist me." After the Vizier departs, excitement bubbles within you. "A royal commission! Will I truly be permitted to help?" "You will do more than help," Ibrahim says. "You will be responsible for 10 of the trees yourself. The weight of this responsibility settles on your shoulders like a heavy cloak. 10 living sculptures, each one representing your skill, your understanding of the sacred art. Trees that will stand in a royal garden for generations, bearing silent witness to your ability or your failure. "I'm not ready," you whisper. "No one ever feels ready," Ibrahim replies. "But the trees will teach you what you need to know if you listen carefully enough." The next morning, you accompany Ibrahim to the palace nursery, where hundreds of saplings grow in neat rows. Here, you will select the 40 trees for the princess's garden. Ibrahim teaches you to look beyond the current appearance of each sapling to see its potential. "This one," he says, indicating a seemingly ordinary apple sapling. "See how the fiber of its trunk already suggests a slight clockwise tendency? It wants to spiral. Our job is merely to encourage its natural inclination." You move among the young trees, your hands lightly touching trunks, feeling for subtle differences in flexibility and growth patterns. By midday, you have selected 40 promising candidates: apples, cherries, plums, and ornamental almonds that will flower beautifully in spring. The saplings are carefully transplanted to a special nursery area where the training will begin. Ibrahim assigns you 10 trees, 3 cherries, 3 plums, 2 apples, and 2 almonds. These will be your responsibility, your first real contribution to the imperial gardens. "Remember," Ibrahim says, "you are beginning a conversation that will continue for decades. Speak clearly, listen carefully, and always with respect." That night, you dream of trees dancing in spirals, their branches reaching toward a star-filled sky. In your dream, you can see the slow movement of their growth, time itself made visible as trunks twist upward in perfect mathematical harmony. You wake with the first light of dawn, eager to begin. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months. Your cherry sapling, your first student, responds well to your guidance. Its slender trunk already shows the beginning of a perfect spiral. Ibrahim praises your work sparingly but sincerely, each word of approval filling you with quiet pride. The seasons turn, leaves fall and bud again. You learn the rhythms of growth, when to adjust bindings, when to leave the trees to rest. Winter is for planning and study, spring for major adjustments, summer for vigilant monitoring, autumn for subtle corrections before dormancy. In your third year as an apprentice in the spiral training art, Ibrahim falls ill. A persistent cough racks his thin frame, and his hands, those miraculous hands that could convince trees to dance, begin to tremble slightly. He dismisses your concerns, insisting on checking your work each day, despite his weakening condition. The trees do not stop growing because we are unwell, he tells you sharply when you suggest he rest. Our duty to them continues regardless of our comfort. Yet you notice he begins to trust you with more complex adjustments, watching from a distance rather than demonstrating. He speaks more openly of techniques he once guarded jealously, as if ensuring the knowledge will continue should his health fail completely. On a warm autumn afternoon, as golden light filters through the leaves of your now thriving cherry tree, Ibrahim beckons you to join him on a stone bench beneath the ancient spiral-trained mulberry. You have questions, he says simply. Ask them now. You hesitate, then voice the thought that has lingered in your mind for months. Master, why do we train the trees to grow in spirals specifically? Why not other shapes? Ibrahim's weathered face creases in a rare smile. At last, you ask the most important question. He gestures upward. What do you see in the heavens at night? Stars, constellations, and how do they move? In circles, around the pole star? Yes. And what of our prayers? How do the faithful move around the Kaaba in Mecca? In circles, you answer, beginning to understand. The spiral, Ibrahim continues, is the circle that grows. It is movement with purpose, returning always to its center while reaching ever outward. It is the path of the soul's journey to Allah, circling back to what matters while still advancing. When we train a tree in this pattern, we create a living reminder of divine order. He pauses, coughing slightly. When he continues, his voice is softer. The Sultan and his court may see only beauty in our work, but we gardeners know its deeper meaning. Each spiral tree is a prayer made visible, a meditation grown in wood and leaf. The weight of this revelation settles over you. All these years of technical training, the precise measurements, the careful wire placements, were in service of something far greater than mere decoration. There is one more thing you must understand, Ibrahim says, his voice now serious. The greatest spiral trees in our garden were begun by gardeners who never lived to see their completion. My master began trees that I am still guiding. I have begun trees that you will one day tend, and you will begin trees that will not reach perfection until long after you have departed this world. He takes your hand, his papery skin cool against yours. This is the final lesson of our art, to work with devotion on something whose fulfillment we will never witness. This is faith. This is how we touch eternity. Tears prick at your eyes, though you fight to maintain composure. Something in Ibrahim's tone suggests he is entrusting you with more than knowledge. He is passing a legacy that stretches back centuries and will continue long after both of you are gone. That winter, Ibrahim's cough worsens. By the time snow dusts the dormant gardens, he can no longer leave his small room in the gardener's quarters. You visit daily, bringing broth and bread, sitting beside his bed as he continues your education, even from his place of rest. The princess's garden, he whispers one evening, his voice threadbare. You must oversee its completion. Promise me. I promise, master, you reply, though the thought of continuing without his guidance terrifies you. Ibrahim dies as winter releases its grip on the land. The gardeners bury him beneath his favorite spiral pine, its magnificent twisting trunk standing sentinel over his rest. The funeral is attended by the Grand Vizier himself, a testament to Ibrahim's standing in the imperial court. After the funeral, the chief gardener summons you to the wooden chest beneath the pine tree. Ibrahim left instructions, he says, producing the iron key. The tools are yours now, as is the responsibility. With trembling hands, you accept the key. That night, alone beneath the stars, you open the chest and find Ibrahim's journal resting atop the other contents. Opening it to the final pages, you find a message written in his shaky hand. To my student, remember that trees outlive men. What we begin, others will complete. What others began, we continue. This is the way of all worthy things. Treat each tree as a verse in an endless poem that began before your birth and will continue after your death. Allah alone sees the completed work. Spring arrives, and with it, new growth in the gardens. Your cherry tree, your first student, now stands taller than you, its spiral trunk a testament to 3 years of patient guidance. You adjust its supports with confident hands, whispering to it as Ibrahim taught you. In the special nursery, the princess's 40 trees thrive under your care. 10 were personally begun by you, but now all 40 are your responsibility. Each morning, you check them methodically, making minor adjustments where needed, pruning unwanted growth, reinforcing the gentle guidance systems. New apprentices watch, you with the same awe you once felt watching Ibrahim. One boy in particular shows promise. A quiet child with careful hands and observant eyes. You begin to teach him as you were taught, starting with the basics of garden maintenance while allowing him to observe your work with the spiral trees. 5 years pass. The princess's wedding approaches, and her special garden nears completion. The 40 spiral-trained fruit trees, now established and flourishing, are ready to be transplanted to their final locations according to the celestial pattern commissioned by the Sultan. On the day of transplanting, the Sultan himself comes to inspect your work. You bow deeply as he walks among the trees, his robes rustling against the gravel paths, his courtiers maintaining a respectful distance. My daughter will be pleased, he finally pronounces. These trees dance as if alive. They are alive, Your Majesty, you reply, then quickly add, that is their beauty. The Sultan regards you with curiosity. My father spoke highly of your master Ibrahim. He said Ibrahim could convince a tree to grow in any shape merely by asking it politely. A rare smile crosses the royal face. I see his skill lives on in your hands. After the Sultan departs, you supervise the careful transplanting of each tree to the princess's garden. The pattern, when viewed from the garden's central pavilion, perfectly matches the constellation arrangement from the night of her birth. When complete, it will serve as both a place of beauty and a living horoscope. That evening, as twilight deepens into night, you return alone to the new garden. Stars emerge overhead, mirroring the pattern of trees below. You think of Ibrahim, of his weathered hands guiding yours, of his voice explaining the sacred geometries. You think of the generations of gardeners who came before, each adding to the knowledge that now resides in your hands. Your original cherry tree, your first student, now stands in a place of honor near the garden entrance. Its spiral trunk rises in perfect mathematical harmony, branches fanning out to create dappled shade below. In spring, it will bloom with thousands of pink flowers, then bear sweet fruit in summer. Touching its bark, you feel the subtle texture of guidance now grown into permanent form. The wire supports were removed years ago. The tree maintains its spiral through its own structure now. What began as gentle suggestion has become nature itself. From your belt, you take your grandfather's pruning knife, the same one you carried on your first day as an apprentice. The olive wood handle has darkened with years of use, polished by the oils of your skin. With it, you carefully trim a small wayward branch from the cherry tree, maintaining the perfection of its form. Somewhere in the garden, an apprentice is likely watching, just as you once watched Ibrahim. Someday, that apprentice's hands will tend this very tree, continuing the conversation you began years ago. And long after both of you have returned to dust, the tree will continue its spiral dance toward heaven, a living prayer connecting earth and sky. In the quiet darkness of the garden, surrounded by the trees you have guided into their sacred geometries, you finally understand Ibrahim's deepest teaching. The art of spiral training is not about controlling nature, but about entering into a relationship with time itself. Each spiral is a visual echo of the universe's own unfurling, a humble human attempt to harmonize with divine patterns. You whisper a prayer of thanks for Ibrahim's wisdom, for the patience the trees have taught you, for the privilege of participating in something greater than yourself. Tomorrow will bring new saplings to train, new challenges to overcome. But tonight, beneath the canopy of stars, you stand as one link in an unbroken chain of gardeners who have learned to write poems in wood. Gardeners who plant seeds they will never see fully grown, who begin spirals that will continue long after they are gone. This is your inheritance. This is your legacy. This is the wisdom of the spiral. And now, this story draws to a close. Take a deep breath as we gently move forward in time, into the next chapter of your journey. Moonlight spills across the Bosphorus, turning its waters to rippling silver. The ancient city sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, minarets piercing the night sky like shadowy needles. In the heart of the imperial palace, where power has resided for centuries, you stand alone in a garden of whispers and secrets. Your calloused fingers trace the spiral pattern of a century-old cypress, feeling the story written in its bark. A story only those who speak the language of trees can understand. The night air carries the scent of jasmine and distant wood smoke, mingling with the earthy perfume of soil recently turned for new plantings. Tomorrow brings uncertainty, but tonight, in this sanctuary of living art, you find momentary peace in the presence of trees that have witnessed the rise and fall of sultans. You are Yusuf Effendi, master gardener to the imperial court, keeper of horticultural wisdom passed down through 17 generations of Ottoman tree shapers. For 30 years, your hands have guided the growth of the palace gardens, creating living poetry in wood and leaf. But never before has your art carried such weight of consequence as it does now, in this autumn of 1839, as winds of change sweep through the empire. 3 weeks ago, Sultan Mahmud II, your patron and protector, drew his final breath. His son, Abdulmejid, barely 17 years old, now wears the imperial turban. The young sultan inherits not only the throne, but a realm teetering between tradition and transformation, between the old ways that have sustained your craft and modernizing forces that threaten to sweep it all away. Your thoughts are interrupted by approaching footsteps on the gravel path. You straighten your back, adjusting your formal gardener's vest, the deep green wool embroidered with gold thread that marks your rank. Only one person would dare disturb you in the private imperial garden at this hour. Master Yusuf, comes the familiar voice. I thought I might find you among your silent friends. Grand Vizier Mustafa Reshid Pasha emerges from the shadows, his tall figure wrapped in a fur-lined cloak against the autumn chill. Though not yet 50, responsibility has etched deep lines around his eyes and mouth. For years, he has been the driving force behind the empire's modernization, and now, with a young sultan on the throne, his influence grows stronger. Your Excellency honors me with his presence, you reply, with a respectful bow. The trees provide wisdom when human counsel fails. Reshid Pasha smiles thinly. And what wisdom do they offer about tomorrow's ceremony? The entire diplomatic corps of Europe will be watching as our young sultan proclaims the Tanzimat reforms. The reforms, a sweeping modernization that will fundamentally alter the empire's governance, granting equal rights to all subjects regardless of faith, establishing new courts, new military structures, new ways that look suspiciously like those of the European powers. Many traditionalists view them as capitulation, an abandonment of Ottoman identity. Trees teach us that change, when properly guided, leads to greater strength. You answer carefully, knowing that Reshid Pasha is the architect of these controversial reforms. But they also remind us that roots matter. A tree that abandons its foundation topples in the first strong wind. The Grand Vizier studies you with shrewd eyes. Always the diplomat, Yusuf Effendi. I wonder if you learned such caution from your trees or from 30 years at court. He gestures for you to walk with him along the moonlit path. I did not come to debate politics with a gardener, however esteemed. You fall into step beside him, curious. The Grand Vizier rarely visits the gardens except for official functions. How may I serve your Excellency? The young Sultan has expressed an interest in the ancient cypress that grows in the third court, the one trained into 7 ascending spirals. He finds its symbolism appropriate for the times. You know the tree immediately, a masterpiece begun over 200 years ago by one of your predecessors. Its massive trunk completes 7 perfect clockwise turns before branching into a majestic crown that towers above the palace walls. 7 spirals for the 7 virtues of righteous rule, according to palace tradition. It is perhaps our finest example of imperial tree training, you acknowledge. Begun during the reign of Ahmed III, if memory serves. Indeed, the Sultan wishes to make use of this symbol. Tomorrow, after the proclamation of the Tanzimat Edict, he will conduct a private ceremony beneath that tree. He will plant 7 new cypress saplings, each to be trained in the spiral tradition. They will stand as living symbols of the 7 principles of the new reforms. Your heart quickens. Such a commission would normally be cause for celebration, a royal endorsement of your ancient art, a guarantee of its continuation for at least another generation. Yet something in the Grand Vizier's tone gives you pause. This is a great honor, you say carefully. My apprentices and I will prepare everything necessary. There is more. Reshid Pasha stops walking, turning to face you directly. In the moonlight, his expression is unreadable. The Sultan wishes these new trees to be trained according to European methods. He has imported gardeners from Paris and Vienna to oversee the project. The words land like a physical blow. For 17 generations, the imperial gardeners have preserved and perfected the art of spiral tree training. Each master has added to the knowledge, refined the techniques, maintained the sacred geometries that guide the living sculptures. And now, foreign hands will take over this most Ottoman of traditions? You struggle to keep your voice even. European methods? Excellency? Forgive my ignorance. But I was not aware that the Europeans practiced spiral tree training. They do not, precisely, Reshid Pasha admits. But they have their own techniques of topiary and espalier that the Sultan finds more modern, more efficient. More efficient. The words echo in your mind like a blasphemy. The art of spiral training has never been about efficiency. It is about patience, about relationship, about human hands working in harmony with natural growth over decades. A properly trained spiral tree takes a lifetime to reach maturity, sometimes several lifetimes. I see, you manage to say, though your chest tightens with each breath. And my role in this new project? You will advise the European gardeners, of course. Share what knowledge is useful. The Sultan recognizes your loyal service. The Grand Vizier begins walking again, indicating the conversation is nearly finished. Consider it an opportunity, Yusuf Effendi. The empire is changing. Those who cannot adapt will be left behind. After Reshid Pasha departs, you remain in the garden until the first light of dawn breaks over the eastern hills. Sleep is impossible as your mind races with implications. This is not merely about gardening techniques. It is about the soul of an empire, about what is preserved and what is discarded in the name of progress. The imperial gardens contain hundreds of spiral-trained trees, some begun centuries ago, each one a living embodiment of Ottoman aesthetics and philosophy. Each spiral represents the soul's journey to Allah, the mathematical harmony of creation, the patient accumulation of wisdom. Can European gardeners, with their rigid geometric topiaries, possibly understand what these trees mean? More importantly, can the art survive if its traditions are broken? The training of a master gardener in the Ottoman tradition requires decades of apprenticeship, beginning in childhood. You yourself started at 9 years old, sweeping paths and carrying water for Master Osman, learning to feel the subtle differences in wood tension before you were ever allowed to touch a training wire. As false dawn gives way to true morning, you make your decision. You cannot prevent change. The winds of transformation blow too strongly now, but perhaps you can preserve what matters most, ensuring that even as the empire reinvents itself, it does not lose its soul. The ceremony unfolds exactly as the Grand Vizier described. In the rose garden of the Third Court, before an audience of foreign diplomats and Ottoman officials, the young Sultan proclaims the Tanzimat reforms. His voice, still carrying the unfinished quality of adolescence, nevertheless rings with conviction as he promises a new era of rights and justice for all subjects of the empire. Afterward, in a more private ceremony, attended only by key officials, the Sultan leads a procession to the ancient spiral cypress. You wait there with 7 cypress saplings, each one carefully selected from the palace nursery for its strength and flexibility. Beside you stand 3 European gardeners, a Frenchman with a waxed moustache, an Austrian with wire spectacles, and an Englishman whose red face suggests discomfort in the Ottoman heat. The Sultan approaches, resplendent in his ceremonial robes. Though young, he carries himself with dignified awareness of his position. He has his father's eyes, thoughtful, observant, but lacks the late Sultan's imposing physical presence. Master Yusuf, he greets you with unexpected warmth. My father spoke often of your skill. He said you could make trees dance. You bow deeply. Your Imperial Majesty honors me with his memory. It was my privilege to serve your esteemed father. The Sultan gestures toward the ancient cypress towering above you. Tell me about this tree. My father called it the guardian of wisdom. This is unexpected. a chance to speak of the tradition before it is set aside. You choose your words carefully. This cypress was begun during the reign of Ahmed III, Your Majesty, approximately 220 years ago. Its 7 spirals represent the 7 virtues of just rulership: wisdom, mercy, courage, temperance, justice, generosity, and foresight. The first spiral begins with a clockwise turn, symbolizing the ruler's obligation to follow the path of righteousness. Each subsequent spiral represents a higher level of understanding. The tree was trained by at least 11 different master gardeners over its lifetime, each one continuing the work of his predecessor according to the original design. No single gardener lived to see its completion, a reminder that true greatness often requires work whose fruits we ourselves may never taste. Something shifts in the young sultan's expression, a flicker of genuine interest breaking through the ceremonial facade. 11 gardeners, he repeats softly, each continuing another's vision across centuries. He glances toward Reshid Pasha, then back to you, not unlike the task of governance itself. Indeed, Your Majesty, the tree teaches patience and continuity. The Sultan considers this, then turns to the waiting saplings, and these will become similar guardians of the 7 principles of our reforms. If Allah wills it, Your Majesty, though they will not reach maturity for many decades. The ceremonial planting proceeds as planned. The Sultan places each sapling in a prepared hole, covers its roots with soil, and speaks the principle it represents: equality before the law, security of life and property, abolition of tax farming, regular military conscription, elimination of corruption, modernization of education, and religious freedom. When the ceremony concludes, Reshid Pasha introduces the European gardeners who will oversee the training of the new trees. The Frenchman, Monsieur Beaumont, steps forward with confident authority. Your Majesty, we are honored to bring modern horticultural science to the service of your enlightened vision. We will create a geometric perfection worthy of the Tanzimat principles. The Sultan nods politely, then surprisingly turns back to you. And what of Master Yusuf? What will be his role? Before Reshid Pasha can answer, you speak directly, bowing once more. If it pleases Your Majesty, I would request permission to train just one of these saplings in the traditional Ottoman method, alongside the European designs. Perhaps the one representing the principle of modernization of education, showing how tradition and progress might grow together. A subtle smile touches the young sultan's lips. An elegant suggestion. Let it be done. These gardens have flourished under your care, Master Yusuf. I would not set aside such wisdom entirely. That evening, after the ceremonial guests have departed, you return to the newly planted saplings. They stand in a perfect circle around a central fountain, each one barely taller than your forearm, their slender trunks still flexible enough to follow any path. The Austrian gardener, Herr Müller, is already there, measuring the trees with calipers and making notes in a leather-bound journal. He nods curtly when he sees you. Ah, Master Yusuf, I was hoping to speak with you about the soil composition. It differs significantly from what we use in the Schönbrunn gardens. You spend an hour discussing practical matters, soil requirements, watering schedules, protection from harsh summer sun. Though your approaches differ, you find Herr Müller genuinely knowledgeable and respectful of the challenges of growing cypress in this climate. When the technical discussion concludes, he gestures toward the ancient spiral cypress visible against the evening sky. I must admit, we have nothing comparable in Vienna. How is such growth achieved? The mathematics of it must be precise. It is both mathematics and relationship, you explain. We use copper wire and cotton padding to establish the initial guidance, But the true art lies in understanding how each tree responds differently, what degree of pressure it will accept, how quickly it incorporates the suggested direction into its natural growth. Herr Müller's scientific curiosity is evident, fascinating. In European topiary, we impose form through regular cutting. Your method seems to collaborate with the tree's growth. Precisely. You warm to the subject, encouraged by his genuine interest. We believe that forcing a shape against the tree's nature creates weakness. The spiral must become the tree's own choice, or it will never achieve true harmony. The conversation continues as night falls completely. To your surprise, Herr Müller asks thoughtful questions about the traditional techniques. By the time you part ways, a seed of an idea has formed in your mind, one that might save more than a single sapling. Over the following weeks, work begins on training the 7 ceremonial cypresses. As expected, the European gardeners employ methods that prioritize quick visual results, rigid supports that force the young trees into predetermined shapes rather than guiding their growth over time. You focus on your single sapling, the one representing educational modernization. With practiced hands, you apply the traditional first stage guidance, soft cotton wrapping to protect the young bark, a gently spiraling copper wire that suggests rather than forces direction. Each morning, you spend time with the tree, observing its responses, making minute adjustments based on its growth patterns. The European gardeners watch with curiosity. Monsieur Beaumont, the Frenchman, remains skeptical of your inefficient methods. The Englishman, Mr. Hargreaves, largely ignores you, focused on his own techniques. But Herr Müller continues to ask questions, to observe your work with scientific interest. One morning you arrive to find him examining your sapling closely. The growth pattern is remarkable, he comments. Already it begins to follow the spiral naturally, with minimal support. That is the goal, you explain. Within 3 years, this tree will maintain its own spiral without external guidance. Your trees will require permanent infrastructure to hold their shapes. Herr Müller adjusts his spectacles thoughtfully. A point worth considering. Perhaps I might experiment with your method on one section of my tree. This opening is precisely what you have hoped for. I would be honored to demonstrate our traditional techniques. Thus begins an unlikely collaboration. While Monsieur Beaumont continues with rigid European methods on his saplings, Herr Müller gradually incorporates more elements of the Ottoman approach. The English gardener, seeing the promising results, eventually asks for similar guidance. 6 months into the project, Grand Vizier Reshid Pasha visits to inspect progress. The saplings show their first signs of distinctive growth patterns, 6 following modified European designs, yours developing in the traditional spiral. To your satisfaction, elements of Ottoman technique have subtly influenced all 7 trees. They grow well, Reshid Pasha observes. The Sultan will be pleased with the symbolism, tradition, and innovation growing side by side. Indeed, Excellency, though the true test will come in the years ahead, when the trees must support their own shapes without artificial means. The Grand Vizier gives you a measuring look, much like the reforms themselves. External pressure may begin the process of change, but true transformation must eventually come from within. He pauses, then adds, I understand you have been sharing traditional knowledge with our European colleagues. With your Excellency's permission, of course. They have shown interest in our methods. Permission granted, retroactively. A rare smile crosses his face. Perhaps old wisdom and new ideas need not always be in conflict. As seasons pass, your subtle strategy bears fruit. Rather than fighting the European methods directly, you have allowed them to see for themselves the wisdom inherent in the traditional approach. By the second year, all 7 trees incorporate elements of Ottoman spiral training alongside European techniques, a living synthesis of old and new. More importantly, you have begun teaching a new generation of Ottoman gardeners. With the Sultan's approval, obtained through Reshid Pasha's influence, you select 3 promising boys from among the palace servants to train in the traditional methods. They begin as you once did, sweeping paths, carrying water, observing master gardeners at work. The eldest, 12-year-old Ahmet, shows particular promise. His hands are naturally gentle with the trees, and he possesses the patience so essential to the craft. You begin his formal training with basic botanical knowledge, identifying wood types by touch alone, understanding the movement of sap through various seasons, reading the subtle language of leaf and bud. One afternoon, as you demonstrate the preparation of healing clay for tree wounds, Ahmet asks a question that catches you by surprise. Master Yusuf, why must trees grow in spirals? Could they not reach Allah by growing straight? The question, so fundamental yet rarely articulated, makes you pause. You reach for the proper words to convey centuries of philosophy embedded in the practice. The straight path is not always the truest path, Ahmet. Consider the movement of stars across the sky. They travel in great circles. Consider the pilgrim's movement around the Kaaba, again in circles. The spiral combines circular return with upward progress. It reminds us that spiritual growth often requires revisiting what we thought we knew, seeing it from new heights of understanding. Ahmet's young face grows serious as he absorbs this. So when we train a tree in spirals, we create a living emblem of the soul's journey. You complete his thought. That is why each spiral must grow from the tree's own nature, not be forced upon it. True spiritual growth cannot be imposed from outside. The boy nods slowly. That is why European methods alone would fail. They have their own wisdom, you correct gently. But yes, their approach lacks this deeper understanding. They shape trees to demonstrate human mastery over nature. We shape them to demonstrate divine harmony expressed through nature. 5 years pass. The 7 ceremonial cypresses grow steadily, their distinctive patterns now clearly visible even to untrained eyes. Your own sapling, maintained in the pure Ottoman tradition, displays a perfect first spiral, its trunk growing thicker as it turns gracefully upward. The other 6 show various hybrid forms, European geometrical precision softened by Ottoman organic flow. The young Sultan, no longer quite so young, visits regularly to observe their progress. Under his rule, the Tanzimat reforms advance unevenly through the empire, embraced in some regions, resisted in others. Like the trees, the new principles require time to take root, to become part of the natural order rather than imposed structure. During one such visit, as you walk with the Sultan along the garden paths, he stops before the ancient 7 spiral, cypress, the guardian of wisdom that has watched over the palace for more than 2 centuries. My father told me these trees hold memories, the Sultan says quietly, that a properly trained spiral tree records everything it witnesses in its very fiber. You nod respectfully. There is truth in that, Your Majesty. The pattern of growth, the width of rings, the direction of grain, reflects the conditions of each season. A knowledgeable eye can read much history in the wood of an ancient tree. The Sultan gazes upward at the towering cypress. What would this one tell us, I wonder? It has seen the empire at its height, and now... He does not complete the thought. Perhaps it would say that all living things must adapt to survive, Your Majesty. The tree grows new rings each year, responding to changing conditions, yet it maintains its essential nature. A smile touches the Sultan's lips. Diplomatically stated, Master Yusuf. He turns to look at the 7 younger trees, his trees, now approaching their 6th year. And these? What future will they witness? That depends on many hands, Your Majesty. Mine will guide them for a time, then others will continue. Each gardener adds his understanding to their growth, much like governance. The Sultan nods thoughtfully. I begin reforms that future sultans must continue. 10 years after the planting ceremony, the European gardeners return to their homelands, their contracts completed. They leave behind training manuals written in their languages, detailed drawings of geometric patterns, and several apprentices instructed in their methods. But they also depart with knowledge of Ottoman techniques, sketches of traditional spiral patterns, notes on the preparation of special growth compounds, observations on the philosophy underlying the practice. The exchange flows both ways, neither tradition wholly displacing the other. In subsequent years, visitors to Vienna's imperial gardens note trees with suspiciously spiral-like tendencies. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, certain formal gardens display geometric precision previously unknown in Ottoman horticulture. You continue your work, now recognized as both keeper of tradition and bridge to innovation. Your position as master gardener is confirmed with expanded responsibilities. You oversee not only the palace gardens, but training programs for gardeners throughout the empire. Through this authority, you ensure the traditional knowledge of spiral training continues to flow, alongside newer techniques. The 7 ceremonial cypresses become famous throughout the empire and beyond. Foreign dignitaries are routinely shown the trees as living symbols of the Tanzimat reforms, tradition and modernity growing harmoniously together. Your own tree, the purely Ottoman spiral representing educational modernization, draws particular praise for its perfect mathematical harmony. 20 years after their planting, with your guidance, all 7 trees have completed their first full spiral and begun their second. They stand taller than a man on horseback now, their distinctive forms immediately recognizable. Most importantly, they grow true, maintaining their shapes naturally without external support. By this time, Ahmet has advanced to become your principal assistant. Under your tutelage, he has mastered the mathematical principles of spiral design, the preparation of traditional compounds, the delicate art of guidance without force. His hands, once small and uncertain, now move with the confident precision of a true master. On a warm autumn day, as golden light bathes the gardens, you take Ahmet to the Imperial Library, a rare privilege for a gardener. There, with the permission of the chief librarian, you show him a treasure few have seen, the collected journals of 17 generations of Ottoman master gardeners. Carefully, reverently, you open your own journal. 30 years of observations, techniques, discoveries. You have recorded everything: the composition of growth compounds, the precise mathematical ratios of perfect spirals, the subtle differences in training methods for various wood types. Most importantly, you have documented the philosophy that gives meaning to the practice. One day, you tell Ahmet, you will add your knowledge to these pages, and after you, another gardener, and another. This is how wisdom survives, not in a single mind, but passed from hand to hand across time. Ahmet bows deeply. I will honor the tradition, Master, and you will add to it, you remind him. Each generation must contribute, not merely preserve. That is the lesson of the spiral, continuity with ascension. As you age, your daily involvement with the trees diminishes, but your influence grows. Through a school established with the Sultan's patronage, you train dozens of gardeners in the traditional methods. Your treatise on spiral tree training is translated into French and circulates among European horticulturalists, creating new appreciation for Ottoman techniques. 30 years after the planting ceremony, the 7 cypresses stand as impressive specimens, each having completed 2 full spirals and beginning their 3rd. They have survived droughts, storms, and political upheavals. 3 sultans have ruled since their planting, each bringing his own interpretation to the ongoing reforms. On a spring morning in your 73rd year, you visit the trees alone. Your steps are slower now, your back slightly bent from decades of gardening work. Yet your eyes remain sharp, your hands still steady enough for the most delicate adjustments. The 7 trees rise before you, magnificent in the morning light. Beyond them stands the ancient guardian cypress, now approaching its 250th year. Together, they span the history of the empire, from its height of power to its current struggle for renewal. You touch each tree in turn, reading its health and growth with practiced fingers. The bark has grown thick and furrowed on the older sections, while newer growth remains smooth. Each tree has developed its own character, some spirals tighter, others more expansive. Like people, trees express individuality within the patterns they are given. As you complete your inspection, you become aware of another presence in the garden. The Sultan, now in his 47th year and carrying the weight of an empire fighting for its place in a changing world, stands watching you. Master, Yusuf, he greets you warmly, still tending your charges after all these years. You bow as deeply as your aged back allows. Your Majesty honors me with his notice. The Sultan approaches, looking up at the trees that were mere saplings when he was a youth. They have grown strong, more beautiful than I imagined when we planted them. They have been fortunate in their caretakers, Your Majesty. The Sultan's gaze turns to you, as has the Empire. He gestures for you to walk with him. I've been studying our history, the cycles of reform and reaction that have marked the last century. Each Sultan begins changes that his successor often abandons. We lack continuity. Perhaps Your Majesty might consider the lesson of the spiral trees, you suggest carefully. True change requires both guidance and patience. Too rigid an approach causes breakage. Too uncertain a hand leads to shapeless growth. The Sultan smiles. You speak like my old tutor, finding wisdom in living things. His expression grows serious. I am establishing an imperial commission to document traditional Ottoman arts and crafts, those at risk of being lost in our rush toward modernization. I would have you lead the horticultural section. The request takes you by surprise. I am honored, Your Majesty, but my remaining years are few. All the more reason to capture your knowledge while we can. The Sultan gestures toward the trees. What you have created here should not be lost. The Empire needs both its new mechanisms and its ancient wisdom. You accept the commission, of course. Over the next 2 years, with Ahmet's assistance, you compile the most comprehensive record of Ottoman tree training ever created. The resulting manuscript, beautifully illustrated by court artists, documents not merely techniques, but the philosophical and spiritual dimensions of the art. When completed, copies are placed in the Imperial Library, the new university, and, at the Sultan's insistence, sent to botanical institutions throughout Europe. What began as a private garden tradition becomes recognized as a significant cultural and scientific achievement, a living embodiment of Ottoman aesthetic principles. In your 76th year, as winter settles over Istanbul, you fall ill with a fever that does not break. Lying in your small room in the gardener's quarters, you listen to wind moving through the trees outside, a sound that has accompanied your entire life. Ahmet sits beside you, now fully grown into his role as your successor. On your instructions, he has brought the master gardener's journal. "I have made my final entries," you tell him, your voice thin but clear. Now it passes to you. Ahmet takes the leather-bound volume with reverent hands. "I will continue your work, master. The trees will be tended as you have taught me." You smile, feeling a peace that transcends your physical discomfort. The 7 ceremonial cypresses will need particular attention as they begin their 4th spiral. The one representing equality before the law has a tendency to favor its southern branches. You will need to compensate with selective pruning. I have noted this," Ahmet assures you, "and the ancient guardian cypress requires copper support for its northeastern limb before next winter's storms." Good. You see what is needed. You close your eyes briefly, gathering strength. Remember what I have taught you about the meaning of our work. We are not merely creating beautiful forms. We are preserving a way of understanding the relationship between human intention and natural growth. "I will remember, master." The next morning, when the Sultan learns of your condition, he visits, briefly, standing silently beside your bed before placing his hand on your forehead in blessing. "The trees will remember you, Master Yusuf," he says simply, "as will the empire." 3 days later, you draw your final breath. Following tradition for master gardeners, you are buried beneath the ancient guardian cypress in the 3rd court. Your grave is marked with a simple turban-topped stone bearing your name and title, Yusuf Effendi, Master of the Spiral. In the decades that follow your passing, the Ottoman Empire continues its uneven path of modernization. Reforms advance and retreat like tides, shaped by internal politics and external pressures. Yet through all these changes, the 7 ceremonial cypresses continue their slow spiral ascent toward heaven. Ahmet, true to his promise, maintains their training according to your methods. He in turn selects his own apprentices, passing on both technical knowledge and philosophical understanding. The journals grow thicker with accumulated wisdom, each generation adding its observations. By the end of the 19th century, the 7 trees have completed 4 full spirals each and stand as magnificent specimens nearly 40 feet tall. Foreign botanical experts journey to Istanbul specifically to study them, publishing papers on their unique training methods in scientific journals throughout Europe. When the Ottoman Empire finally dissolves in the early 20th century, giving way to the Turkish Republic, the palace gardens become a national museum. Modern visitors stroll paths you once swept as an apprentice, marvel at trees you trained with patient hands, and read informational plaques describing the ancient art of spiral training, an art you helped preserve when it might have been lost. And, in universities and botanical gardens around the world, the techniques you documented continue to influence a new generation of horticultural artists who create their own interpretations of the ancient patterns. The spiral continues, ascending, while returning, changing while remembering, exactly as you taught. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. Silver moonlight spills across the ancient garden walls, casting long shadows that dance among the spiral-trained trees like secret messengers. The night air hangs heavy with jasmine and mystery, carrying whispers of centuries past when these same stars witnessed the rise and fall of sultans. Tonight, you step carefully along hidden paths, your heart beating rapid rhythms against your ribs as you navigate the forbidden territory of the Imperial Gardens after dark. You are Layla, 17 years old, daughter of the Assistant Imperial Gardener, and you are breaking every rule that has governed your sheltered existence. Women are not permitted in the sacred inner gardens of Topkapi Palace without escort. Furthermore, the specialized knowledge of spiral tree training has been preserved exclusively by men for 16 generations. The sacred geometries, the careful techniques of guiding living wood into mystical patterns, these secrets are not meant for feminine hands. Yet here you are, slipping through shadows like a ghost, drawn by a passion for the spiral trees that has consumed you since childhood. Your fingers brush against rough bark as you pass each masterpiece. Trees begun decades or even centuries before your birth, their trunks twisting in perfect mathematical harmony toward heaven. This forbidden knowledge calls to you, pulses in, your blood like an inheritance denied. Tonight marks the third consecutive evening you have risked everything to meet secretly with your father in this hidden corner of the Imperial Garden. Though tradition forbids him from teaching you directly, your father, Mustafa Effendi, second only to the Master Gardener himself, has found his conscience troubled as he ages without a son to inherit his knowledge. "The art will die with me," he had whispered one evening by the household fire, unaware that you listened from the shadows. 400 years of wisdom, lost because Allah blessed me with daughters instead of sons. You had stepped forward then, unable to contain yourself. "Teach me, Baba. My hands are steady, my mind quick. The trees do not know whether they are touched by man or woman." His refusal had been immediate, as tradition demanded. Yet you saw the hesitation in his eyes, the silent acknowledgement that you had spoken truth. For weeks, you persisted, demonstrating your understanding of plants, your natural affinity for their care. You had been helping in the household garden since you could walk after all. The beans climbed more vigorously on your trellises. The roses bloomed more abundantly under your attention. Finally, 3 nights ago, he had relented, not with words, but with a small gesture. As he left for his evening inspection, he had forgotten the small brass key that opened the gardener's gate. You had followed an hour later, heart pounding, key clutched in your sweating palm. Now, as you approach the hidden clearing where these lessons occur, you see your father already waiting. His tall figure stands beside a young cypress sapling, barely taller than yourself, planted in a large ceramic pot. This will be your student, the living being upon which you will learn the ancient art, if you prove worthy. "You are late," he says quietly, his weathered face giving no hint of emotion in the moonlight. The trees do not wait for human convenience. Their growth continues whether we are mindful or not. "Forgive me, Baba," you reply, slightly breathless, "from your cautious journey through the darkened gardens. Mother required assistance with the evening bread." He nods, accepting your explanation without comment. Your mother knows nothing of these forbidden lessons. Better that way. Her devotion to tradition would never permit such transgression. "Tonight you will learn the first principle of spiral training," your father says, gesturing toward the sapling. "Come, touch the trunk. Tell me what you feel." You approach the young cypress, its scent sharp and resinous in the night air. With gentle fingers, you explore its slender trunk, feeling the subtle variations in its surface. The bark is smooth, but uneven, with natural ridges running vertically. It has direction, you say hesitantly. The fibers want to grow straight upward, but there are places where they already curve slightly. Your father's expression softens slightly, the closest he comes to showing approval. Good. You feel the tree's intention. Now, what is the first principle of training? You have rehearsed this answer many times, having overheard the master gardeners discussing their craft throughout your childhood. Never force. Guide with respect for the tree's nature. Find where it already wishes to turn and encourage that tendency. Correct. From a leather pouch at his belt, your father produces coils of thin copper wire and strips of soft cotton cloth. The wire directs, the cloth protects. Too tight, and the tree rebels, growing deformed or dying. Too loose, and it ignores our guidance. The art lies in finding perfect tension. For the next hour, he demonstrates the technique of applying the first training wires to establish a spiral pattern. His hands move with practiced precision, the result of 30 years' experience. You watch intently, committing every motion to memory. Now, he says finally, removing the wires and cloth, you will try. With trembling hands, you accept the materials. The responsibility overwhelms you momentarily. This living thing will carry the mark of your touch for decades, perhaps centuries. A mistake now could doom it to deformity or weakness. Taking a deep breath, you begin. First, the protective cloth wrapped gently around the trunk at measured intervals. Then, the copper wire applied in a perfect mathematical spiral, not too tight, not too loose. Your fingers work tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as you feel the tree responding to your touch. Your hands are good, your father murmurs, watching closely. You have the touch. But remember, you are beginning a conversation that will continue for years. Speak clearly from the beginning. When you finish, he inspects your work in silence. Finally, he nods. It will do for a first attempt. Tomorrow night, we will discuss the sacred geometries that govern the perfect spiral. As you prepare to leave, a distant sound freezes you both. Voices approaching along the main garden path. Palace guards making their rounds. Quickly, your father whispers urgently. Behind the jasmine wall, do not move until they have passed. You slip into the dense foliage just as torchlight appears at the garden's edge. Pressed against the cool earth, barely breathing, you watch through gaps in the leaves as two guards pass. They pause briefly near your training cypress, commenting on the unusual placement of a potted tree, but continue their patrol without investigation. When silence returns, your father helps you to your feet. Too dangerous, he mutters. We must find another place. The risk is too great. The abandoned orchard beyond the fourth wall, you suggest. No one goes there since the well dried up. He considers this, then nods. Tomorrow, after evening prayer, bring the cypress. I will leave it near the servants' gate. The following evening unfolds as planned. You retrieve the potted cypress and carry it carefully to the abandoned orchard. Once a productive garden of plum and apricot trees, now overgrown and forgotten as newer gardens claimed the palace gardener's attention. In this secluded spot, your education truly begins. Night after night, your father shares knowledge preserved through centuries of Ottoman gardening tradition. You learn the mathematics of the perfect spiral, how its proportions mirror those found in seashells, in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, in the movement of stars across the heavens. The spiral is divine writing, your father explains, tracing patterns in the soil with a stick. Allah has placed it throughout creation as a sign for those who understand. When we train trees in this pattern, we acknowledge the underlying order of the universe. You absorb everything hungrily, the practical techniques and the philosophical underpinnings. You learn to prepare special clay poultices that help trees heal when their bark is stressed by training. You memorize the optimal angles for different species. Cypress requires a gentler spiral than pine. Fruit trees need more gradual curves than ornamentals. Most importantly, you develop patience, the essential virtue of the tree trainer. Your father shows you trees in various stages of development, 2-year specimens just beginning to incorporate the spiral into their natural growth, decade-old examples whose trunks have thickened around the training wires, requiring careful adjustment to prevent damage. The greatest masterpieces, he tells you, are begun by gardeners who will not live to see their completion. Selim the Great commissioned spiral gardens, whose final form emerged 50 years after his death. This is the humility our craft teaches. To work for beauty one may never witness. Months pass in this pattern of secret education. Your cypress thrives under your care, its trunk now completing nearly half a spiral turn. Your hands grow confident. Your understanding deepens. Sometimes your father brings precious texts from the gardener's library, ancient manuscripts detailing techniques developed over centuries. You cannot take these home, so you study them by moonlight, committing diagrams and instructions to memory. As your knowledge grows, so does the danger. Twice, you narrowly avoid discovery by palace guards. Once, the master gardener himself nearly catches your father removing training materials from the supply shed at an unusual hour. The strain begins to show on your father's face, the constant fear of discovery, the knowledge that he breaks sacred tradition with each lesson. Then, on a warm summer evening in 1874, everything changed. You arrive at your meeting place to find your father unusually agitated. I have been summoned to Bursa, he tells you without preamble. The provincial governor requests assistance with his gardens. Master Ahmet has selected me for the task. Your heart sinks. How long will you be gone, Baba? 3 months, perhaps 4. He paces the small clearing, unusually restless. I leave tomorrow at first light. The implications settle heavily between you. 4 months without lessons. 4 months during which your cypress will continue growing, requiring adjustments to its training apparatus. What about my tree? You ask, gesturing toward your student cypress. Your father stops pacing and faces you directly. In the silver moonlight, his expression is solemn, almost ceremonial. You must continue without me. I have taught you the basics. The tree will be your teacher now. From his belt, he removes a small object wrapped in silk. Unwrapping it carefully, he reveals a miniature set of gardener's tools, copper wire cutters, tiny pruning shears, a specialized bark gauge. These are not crude household implements, but precision instruments used only by master gardeners. These were to be for my son, he says quietly. I had them made when your mother was expecting our first child. I have kept them all these years, waiting for Allah's will to provide an heir to my knowledge. He places the tools in your trembling hands. Allah's ways are mysterious. Perhaps this is why I was blessed with a daughter whose hands understand trees. Tears blur your vision as you accept this profound gift. More than mere tools, he is giving you legitimacy, acknowledging your right to the knowledge he has shared. I will make you proud, Baba, you whisper. You already have. He embraces you briefly, then steps back, professional distance returning to his manner. Now, let us use our remaining time wisely. Tonight, You must learn how to adjust the guidance systems as your tree grows. After your father's departure for Bursa, you continue your solitary practice in the abandoned orchard. Every third night, you visit your cypress, checking its progress, making tiny adjustments to the training wires, applying protective salves. To the bark, where pressure points develop, the responsibility weighs heavily, but also fills you with purpose. This living thing depends on your care, your understanding. Without proper guidance now, its growth will become chaotic. Its intended spiral lost. You cannot let that happen. Not to your tree, and not to the knowledge your father has entrusted to you. One night, approximately a month after your father's departure, you arrive at the orchard to find a disturbing sight. Your cypress has been moved slightly from its usual position, and the training wires show signs of adjustment by another. And someone else has been tending your tree. Fear clutches at your throat. Discovery would mean disgrace for your father, perhaps even dismissal from his position. For yourself, punishment for trespassing in imperial gardens would be severe. You consider abandoning the project entirely, retrieving your tools, and never returning. But as you step forward to examine your tree more closely, a voice speaks from the shadows. The tension on the northern side was too great. The bark was beginning to strain. You whirl around, heart pounding, to find a figure stepping from behind a gnarled apricot tree. In the dappled moonlight, you recognize Kemal Effendi, your father's elderly colleague and the master gardener's chief assistant. Kemal Effendi, you stammer, instinctively bowing your head respectfully. I can explain. He raises a hand, stopping your panicked words. No need, Layla. I have known about these lessons since they began. Confusion replaces fear. You knew, but you didn't report us. The old gardener moves closer, examining your cypress with critical eyes. Your father and I trained under the same master. We have worked side by side for 30 years. Did you think he would undertake such a risk without confiding in someone? He gently adjusts one of the protective cloth strips, his gnarled fingers moving with surprising delicacy. Besides, I was curious to see what would come of it. A female tree trainer, unprecedented in our tradition, yet. He pauses, studying your work. Your instincts are good, better than many boys I've tried to teach. Relief washes over you, followed by a surge of pride at this unexpected validation. Will you report us now? You ask hesitantly. Kemal shakes his head slowly. The art of spiral training faces greater threats than a girl with talented hands. The new palace gardeners hired from Europe care nothing for our traditions. They bring mechanical approaches, seeking quick results, without understanding the philosophy behind our methods. His weathered face creases with concern. Our knowledge thins with each generation. Can I really object to its preservation, even through unconventional means? He gestures for you to continue your work on the cypress. As you make your adjustments under his watchful eye, he asks pointed questions about your understanding of the techniques. Your answers seem to satisfy him. Your father has taught you well, he acknowledges finally. But there is much more to learn. Knowledge he himself does not possess. Advanced techniques preserved only in the master gardener's private journals. Hope flares within you. Would you consider? The old man sighs heavily. I am too deeply bound by tradition to teach you directly, but perhaps, he pauses, considering, perhaps I could leave certain texts accessible. If someone were to study them without my knowledge, I could hardly be blamed. Thus begins a strange new phase of your education. Every few weeks you find gardening manuals or loose manuscript pages tucked beneath the pot of your cypress tree. These precious documents appear mysteriously and must be returned the same way, studied quickly under moonlight and committed to memory before returning them to their hiding place. The materials grow increasingly advanced, diagrams showing complex, spiral patterns used in imperial commissions, formulas for calculating the precise tension needed for trees of different ages, techniques for creating compound spirals, where secondary branches continue the mathematical pattern established in the trunk. Your cypress thrives under this expanded knowledge. By the end of summer, it has completed 3/4 of its first spiral turn. The curve flows naturally now, the tree having incorporated the suggested direction into its own growth pattern. Soon, you will be able to remove the original guidance, wires, allowing the tree to maintain its spiral through its own structure. As autumn approaches, you receive word that your father's assignment in Bursa has been extended through winter. The provincial governor, impressed with his work, has requested that he redesign the entire palace garden. This is a professional triumph for your father, but means many more months of separation. In his letters home, encoded messages to you are hidden among family news. The young trees bend well toward the light here means continue your practice. Remember to watch for early frosts that may damage new growth. Warns you to be cautious about discovery. One crisp autumn evening, as you finish adjusting your cypress's support system, Kamal Effendi appears at your side. His expression is troubled. The master gardener has fallen ill, he says without greeting. A lung ailment that worsens daily. The palace physician offers little hope. You murmur sympathetic words. Master Ahmet has served the imperial gardens for nearly 40 years, maintaining traditions that stretch back to the conquest of Constantinople. His journals, Kamal continues urgently. His life's observations on the art of spiral training. He has requested they be burned upon his death to prevent the Europeans from acquiring our sacred techniques. Horror fills you at the thought of such knowledge being lost forever. But surely they should be preserved, passed to the next master gardener. Kamal's face darkens. That is the problem. The Sultan's new head chamberlain favors modern approaches. He has already suggested appointing that French gardener, Laurent, as the next master, a foreigner who knows nothing of our traditions. The implications are clear. Centuries of accumulated wisdom about spiral tree training, an art form unique to Ottoman culture, could disappear within weeks. What can be done, you ask? Though you suspect his coming to you means he already has a plan. The journals must be copied, Kamal says simply. Quickly, before Master Ahmet passes. I cannot do it myself. Suspicion would fall on me immediately. But you... He gives you a measuring look. You write a clean hand, yes? Your father mentioned you were taught by the Imam's wife. You nod slowly, understanding dawning. You want me to copy the master gardener's journals? Not all. There is no time. But the essential knowledge of spiral training, the most advanced techniques, the philosophical underpinnings. Perhaps 50 pages of critical information. How would I gain access to them? Kamal's expression grows conspiratorial. Master Ahmet sleeps most days now. I attend him in the evenings. His journals are kept in a cedar chest by his bedside. I could borrow a few pages each night. You would need to copy them quickly and return them before morning. The risk is enormous, far beyond your nighttime garden lessons. Discovery could mean imprisonment for both you and Kamal, disgrace for your father, shame upon your entire family. Yet the alternative is to let irreplaceable knowledge perish. Knowledge that has been accumulated painstakingly over centuries, passed from master to apprentice, continuously refined and expanded. Knowledge that transforms living trees into spiritual symbols, mathematical harmonies made visible in wood and leaf. "I'll do it," you say, quietly. That night begins the most dangerous phase of your secret education. Each evening, Kamal slips you a few precious pages from Master Ahmet's journals. You work through the night by lamplight in your family's small home, copying the text and diagrams onto paper purchased from the market with your own saved coins. The journals are revelatory. Master Ahmet's observations go far beyond technical instructions into the realm of philosophy and spiritual symbolism. He describes how different spiral patterns correspond to specific Quranic verses, how the mathematics of tree training reflect divine proportions found throughout creation. His technical knowledge is equally impressive. Solutions for problems you hadn't even considered. Techniques for creating effects you've never seen in the palace gardens. Night after night, you labor over these copies, your eyes burning with fatigue, your hand cramping from hours of careful writing. During the day, you perform your normal household duties in a state of exhausted distraction. Your mother notices your tiredness, but attributes it to increased responsibilities while your father is away. 2 weeks into this secret project, disaster nearly strikes. You have fallen asleep over your copying work when your younger sister shakes you awake shortly before dawn. "Layla, wake up! Mother will be rising for morning prayer soon." You jolt upright, horrified to find Master Ahmet's journal pages scattered across the small table. Hastily, you gather them along with your copies, concealing everything beneath your sleeping mat moments before your mother enters the room. That night, when you return the original pages to Kamal, your hands are shaking. "We cannot continue this way," you tell him. "The risk is too great." The old gardener nods grimly. "Master Ahmet worsens daily, perhaps another week at most. We must focus on the most critical knowledge now." He selects specific sections of the journals, the most advanced spiral techniques, the mathematical formulas not recorded elsewhere, the philosophical explanations that give meaning to the practice. You copy these with particular care, knowing they represent the culmination of a lifetime's wisdom. 3 days later, Master Ahmet passes into Allah's hands. As tradition dictates, his body is washed and buried within 24 hours. True too, his wishes, his personal effects, including his journals, are burned in a solemn ceremony attended by palace officials and gardeners. Kamal watches the flames consume the original texts, his weathered face impassive. Only you know that the most precious knowledge has been preserved in your careful copies, now hidden beneath a loose floorboard in your family's modest home. As expected, the French gardener Laurent is appointed the new master of Imperial Gardens. Within weeks, he begins implementing European methods, formal geometric patterns, mechanically precise pruning, ornamental arrangements that prioritize immediate visual impact over long-term harmony. The spiral-trained trees of previous generations remain, but no new ones are begun. The palace apprentices learn European techniques instead of Ottoman traditions. The ancient art form begins its slide toward extinction, except in one forgotten corner of the imperial grounds. In the abandoned orchard, your cypress continues its spiral journey under your guidance. With each visit, you apply the advanced techniques learned from Master Ahmet's journals. The tree responds beautifully, its spiral now mathematically perfect, its growth robust despite the coming winter. Kamal visits occasionally, offering subtle suggestions, watching your progress with approving eyes. "You would have made a fine," official apprentice, he tells you one evening, had Allah seen fit to make you a boy. You smile at this backhanded compliment. Perhaps Allah knew the knowledge would need protection, not prominence, in these changing times. The old gardener nods thoughtfully. Perhaps. Winter arrives with unusual severity. Heavy snow blankets Istanbul, bringing palace garden work to a near standstill. You visit your cypress less frequently, concerned that your footprints in the snow might lead others to your secret project. During this forced seclusion, you study your copied pages obsessively, committing every diagram and formula to memory. You begin sketching designs for future trees, planning spiral patterns of increasing complexity. Though your hands cannot practice, your mind continues absorbing the ancient knowledge. In early spring, as the snow retreats and the first buds appear on the trees, your father returns from Bursa. He arrives home thin and tired from his journey, but filled with excitement about his successful work for the provincial governor. When he first visits your cypress, now beginning its second year of training, his eyes widen with surprise and admiration. The tree has flourished beyond his expectations, its spiral more precise than anything he taught you. How did you achieve this? He asks, examining the guidance system you've developed based on Master Ahmet's techniques. You explain about Kamal's intervention, about the copied journals, about the knowledge preserved from destruction. Your father listens with an expression that shifts from concern to wonder to solemn pride. Do you understand what you have done, daughter? He asks finally. You have become the heir to knowledge that stretches back to the gardens of Topkapi's founding. Knowledge that might otherwise have been lost forever. The weight of this responsibility settles over you. What do we do now, Baba? The new master. Gardner has no interest in our traditions. Your father is quiet for a long moment, thinking. We preserve, we practice, we pass the knowledge forward. He gestures to your cypress. This tree is just the beginning. We will plant others, not here in the palace grounds where they draw attention, but elsewhere. Where? I have purchased land, he reveals. A small piece of ground near the city walls, with good soil and a reliable well. It was to be a retirement garden for your mother and me. But now, he smiles slightly, now it will serve a greater purpose. Over the following months, your father's garden takes shape. The plot is modest, perhaps a quarter acre, but sheltered by old walls and blessed with consistent sunlight. Here, your cypress is transplanted, along with a dozen new saplings carefully selected for their potential to receive spiral training. Your father builds a small wooden shed to store tools and materials. Inside, a hidden compartment beneath the floor houses your copied pages from Master Ahmet's journals, along with your father's own observations accumulated over decades of practice. Kamal visits occasionally, bringing rare saplings rescued from palace renovations or specialized materials difficult to obtain in public markets. Though officially loyal to the new master gardener, his heart remains with the ancient traditions he has served his entire life. The French methods produce quick results, he confides during one visit, but the trees have no soul. They are like painted backdrops rather than living beings. Your garden becomes a sanctuary for the endangered art form. By day, your father maintains his official duties in the imperial gardens, implementing the European designs demanded by his new superior. But evenings and rest days are devoted to the true craft, the patient, philosophical practice of spiral, training preserved through your forbidden education. Word spreads quietly among the older gardeners, those who trained under Master Ahmet and his predecessors. Some visit discreetly, bringing cuttings from ancient spiral trees in the palace. ensuring their genetic legacy continues, even if new specimens are no longer trained in the imperial gardens. 2 years after your father's return from Bursa, an unexpected visitor arrives at your garden gate. The aging Grand Vizier, recently retired from official duties but still influential in palace circles, stands leaning on a carved walking stick, accompanied by a single attendant. Your father welcomes him with appropriate ceremony, though anxiety radiates from his rigid posture. Has your preservation effort been discovered? Will official sanctions follow? The Grand Vizier moves slowly through the garden, examining each spiral-trained sapling with careful attention. He pauses longest before your cypress, now showing 2 complete spiral turns and beginning its 3rd. Exquisite work, he murmurs. The mathematics are perfect. Who trained this specimen? Your father hesitates, then gestures for you to step forward from where you've been hovering at the garden's edge. My daughter, Excellency, under my guidance. The Grand Vizier's bushy eyebrows rise in surprise. He studies you with penetrating eyes. A female tree trainer? Unprecedented. A smile slowly crosses his face. But then, unprecedented times call for unprecedented solutions, do they not? He turns back to your father. Mustafa Effendi, I have watched with sorrow as our horticultural traditions fade under foreign influence. The Sultan himself has expressed regret that the distinctive Ottoman garden style seems to be disappearing. He recently mentioned to me his fond memories of the spiral cypress trees from his childhood. Hope flickers in your father's expression. The knowledge still lives, Excellency. We have preserved the techniques. So I see. The Grand Vizier gestures expansively at your modest garden. And this is why I have come. The Sultan plans a new pleasure garden at the Summer Palace. He wishes it to showcase traditional Ottoman elements alongside modern designs, a harmony of old and new. He specifically requested spiral-trained trees like those he remembers. He fixes your father with a significant look. The new master gardener confessed he lacks expertise in this particular tradition. I suggested you might be consulted. The implications are clear. An opportunity to reintroduce the ancient art form to official imperial gardens. Your father bows deeply. It would be my honor to serve the Sultan's vision. Excellent. The Grand Vizier begins moving toward the gate, then pauses, looking back at you. The girl's tree shows remarkable precision. Perhaps she might assist in the design process. Unofficially, of course. After he departs, your father stands in stunned silence for several moments. Then, slowly, a smile spreads across his weathered face. Allah works in mysterious ways, he says finally. What began as forbidden knowledge may yet return to its rightful place. The commission for the Sultan's new garden becomes your father's professional triumph, working initially behind the scenes, then gradually more openly as the French master gardener acknowledges his dependence on your father's expertise. Mustafa Effendi designs an elegant synthesis of traditional and modern elements. At the heart of the garden stand 7 spiral-trained cypress trees arranged in a mathematical pattern derived from Master Ahmet's journals. Though officially your father receives credit for their design, many of the technical solutions come from your suggestions based on your meticulous study of the preserved knowledge. When the Sultan visits the completed garden the following year, he stands in silent appreciation before the spiral trees. This, he finally declares, is Ottoman. This speaks of who we are, our patience, our mathematical precision, our harmony with nature's own tendencies. The French master gardener, standing nearby, offers a diplomatic smile. A successful integration of traditional elements with modern design principles, Your Majesty. The Sultan's response is pointed. Ensure that these traditional techniques are not lost again. I want apprentices trained in this art. Thus begins a quiet renaissance of spiral tree training in the imperial gardens. Your father is appointed, special master of traditional techniques, with authority to select and train apprentices in the ancient methods. The copied pages from Master Amit's journals, supplemented now with your father's observations and your own innovations, become teaching texts, albeit without attribution to their true source. The question of your continued involvement remains delicate. Tradition still forbids female participation in official imperial gardening, yet your knowledge has become indispensable. The solution emerges organically. You become your father's assistant in documentation, ostensibly recording techniques but actually contributing substantively to both design and training. Over the following years, your unique position gradually gains acceptance. The French master gardener, impressed by results he cannot achieve through his own methods, chooses not to inquire too deeply about the source of certain design innovations. Younger apprentices, less bound by tradition than their elders, accept instruction from you without question when your father is occupied elsewhere. Your original cypress tree, now in its 7th year of training, becomes a model for demonstrating advanced techniques. Visiting dignitaries from European courts marvel at its mathematical precision, the perfect harmony of its proportions. Seeds from this tree are collected and distributed to gardens throughout the empire, ensuring its genetic legacy continues. As you enter your 25th year, your life takes another unexpected turn. Ahmed Bey, a young architect responsible for restoring several historic mosques in Istanbul, visits the imperial gardens seeking advice on historically appropriate landscaping. Assigned to assist him, you spend several weeks discussing the integration of spiral-trained trees into classical Ottoman garden design. His respect for your knowledge is immediate and genuine. Unlike many men of his generation, he shows no discomfort at receiving expert guidance from a woman. Your professional conversations gradually extend to other subjects: philosophy, poetry, the changing nature of the empire. Within 6 months, with your father's blessing, Ahmed asks for your hand in marriage. Your wedding is celebrated in the garden where your education began, beneath the spreading branches of your first cypress, now a magnificent specimen whose spiral turns reach toward heaven with mathematical precision. The Grand Vizier himself attends, presenting you with a rare gift, a set of gardening tools inlaid with mother of pearl, traditionally given only to imperial gardeners of the highest rank. For the preserver of knowledge, the accompanying note reads, acknowledging what cannot be stated publicly. Marriage to Ahmed brings new opportunities for your work. His restoration projects throughout Istanbul require historically accurate landscaping, creating perfect settings to reintroduce spiral-trained trees to public spaces. Through his architectural connections, you establish relationships with prominent families who commission private gardens featuring the revived Ottoman style. Though you never hold an official title, your influence spreads through these projects. Young gardeners specifically request training in the spiral techniques you have preserved and refined. Some travel from distant provinces, having heard rumors of knowledge rescued from extinction. When your first child is born, a daughter with your eyes and Ahmed's thoughtful expression, you whisper a promise as you hold her. You will inherit all my knowledge freely, without need for midnight lessons or hidden texts. As the 19th century draws toward its close, political upheavals shake the Ottoman Empire. Yet through these turbulent times, the trees continue their slow, patient spiraling toward the sky. The garden arts you helped preserve become recognized, as an important cultural heritage, worthy of documentation and continuation regardless of political changes. In your 50th year, you receive an unprecedented honor. The agricultural school established under modernization reforms requests your participation in documenting traditional Ottoman gardening techniques. For the first time, your name appears in official records as an authority on spiral tree training. The book produced from this project, Ottoman Garden Arts, Traditional Techniques and Mathematical Principles, contains an entire chapter on spiral training methods, illustrated with diagrams based on your designs. Though the text diplomatically avoids mentioning that many of these techniques were preserved through the forbidden education of a gardener's daughter, those who know the true story recognize your contribution. Your father, now in his 70s, with hands gnarled from decades of garden work, holds the published volume with tears in his eyes. Who could have imagined, he whispers, that breaking tradition would be the only way to save it? In gardens throughout Istanbul and beyond, trees continue their spiral dance toward heaven, their trunks turning in mathematical harmony with the universe. Each one carries the touch of your hands, directly or through those you have taught. Each one embodies knowledge that might have disappeared, wisdom preserved because a young woman dared to learn what was forbidden, and because those who loved tradition were willing to break with it to ensure its survival. In the quiet evening of your life, sitting beneath the magnificent cypress that was your first student, now a towering spiral of living mathematics, you watch your granddaughters, learning to apply training wires to young saplings. Their small hands work with natural confidence, untroubled by questions of who may or may not participate in this ancient art. The trees, as always, accept their touch without prejudice. They respond to skill and understanding, not to gender or tradition. They continue their slow, patient growth, preserving in their spiral forms the touch of many hands across time, the accumulated wisdom of generations found worthy to guide living wood toward heaven. This moment fades softly now. Let's continue on, deeper into the past. Dawn filters through the high-latticed windows, casting honeyed light across the worn stone floor of your small chamber. You rise before the call to prayer, as you have each morning for 40 years. Your hands, weathered, calloused, but remarkably sensitive, move with practiced confidence through familiar space, finding your prayer mat, your simple robe, the carved wooden box containing your specialized tools. Though darkness has been your constant companion since childhood fever took your sight at the age of 9, you navigate your world with precision, born of perfect memory and finely tuned senses. The servants of Sultan Murad IV's imperial gardens call you Kadir the Nightingale, for your ability to identify hundreds of plants by their scent alone, and for the soft, melodic instructions you murmur to apprentice gardeners as you work. You are Kadir Effendi, 62 years of age, holder of the ancient title, Master of the Spiral Trees. For 4 decades, you have designed and cultivated the magnificent spiral-trained trees that make the Ottoman imperial gardens the envy of visiting dignitaries from Venice to Persia. That you have accomplished this without ever seeing your creations is a source of endless fascination to those who visit the Sultan's private sanctuary. As you finish your ablutions, a light knock sounds at your door. "Master Kadir," calls a young voice. Chief Gardener Ibrahim requests your presence at the new planting site. The saplings have arrived from Bursa. "Tell him I shall come directly," you reply, securing your belt and reaching for your walking staff, a smooth cypress branch that has guided your steps for 20 years. The staff is marked with subtle notches that allow you to measure distances and heights with your fingertips. one of many adaptations you have developed to practice your art without sight. You step outside into the fragrant morning air. Though you cannot see the splendor of the imperial gardens surrounding you, your other senses paint a vivid picture. The distinctive scent of each flower bed tells you precisely where you stand within the vast grounds. The subtle changes in temperature between sun and shade mark the boundaries between open areas and tree-lined paths. The sound of water from a particular fountain confirms you are passing the rose pavilion, while the slight incline beneath your feet indicates you are approaching the elevated terraces where today's work awaits. Gardeners and laborers call respectful greetings as you pass, though some newer servants still marvel at the blind master moving confidently through complex gardens he cannot see. Those who have worked alongside you for years understand that your darkness contains its own kind of vision. "Ah, Kadir Effendi," comes the resonant voice of Ibrahim, chief gardener to the imperial court. "The trees await your judgment." You sense others gathered nearby, apprentices, laborers, perhaps even court officials observing the commencement of this significant project. The Sultan commissioned a magnificent garden to commemorate his recent military victories. 40 spiral-trained fruit trees arranged in patterns reflecting the celestial configuration on the night of his triumphant return to Istanbul. How many saplings did Bursa send, you ask, approaching the area where you detect the distinctive scent of freshly turned earth and young trees. 60 cherries, 40 plums, and 30 apricots. Ibrahim replies, "All 2 years old, as you specified." You nod in satisfaction. "Let me examine them. We must select only those with the proper temperament for spiral training." A young apprentice guides you to where the saplings await in their temporary soil beds. You kneel beside the first row, setting your walking staff aside. This initial selection is critical. A tree that resists the spiral pattern will never achieve the harmony required for the Sultan's garden, no matter how skilled the training. With practiced hands, you examine the first cherry sapling. Your fingers move deliberately from roots to crown, assessing every aspect of the young tree. The thickness of the trunk, the spacing of branches, the flexibility of the wood, the health of the bark, all reveal themselves to your touch as clearly as visual inspection would to a sighted gardener. "This one is too rigid," you declare, setting it aside. The fiber already grows with strong vertical intention. It would fight the spiral pattern. You move to the next sapling. "Ah, this one has promise. Feel here, Mustafa," you say to your chief apprentice, guiding his hand to the trunk. Notice how the fiber already suggests a slight clockwise turn. This tree has natural inclination toward the spiral. For over 2 hours, you examine each sapling, selecting 40 perfect candidates for the Sultan's project. Your choices, occasionally, puzzle the observing gardeners, rejecting apparently beautiful specimens, while approving others with less impressive appearance. But none question your judgment, for your reputation rests on 40 years of creating living masterpieces. Once the selection is complete, you supervise the precise placement of each sapling according to the celestial pattern determined weeks earlier in consultation with the court astronomer. Though you cannot see the stars that inspired this design, you have committed the mathematical relationships to memory, visualizing them as clearly as any sighted person might. The central apricot represents Polaris, you explain to the gathered apprentices. Around it, the cherries form the Great Bear constellation. The plums, arranged in their precise pattern, represent the crown. Each tree must be planted at exact distances from the others to maintain the celestial harmony. With measuring cords knotted at precise intervals, a system you devised years ago to translate visual distances into tactile information, you direct the placement of each sapling. The head gardener confirms that your measurements are perfect, though he has long since ceased to be surprised by your precision. As the morning progresses, court officials arrive to observe the work. Among them, you detect the distinctive sandalwood scent and soft footsteps of Osman Effendi, the Sultan's personal secretary. Master Kadir, he greets you formally. His Imperial Majesty wishes to know when the garden will begin to show its designed form. You straighten from your work, turning toward the voice with a respectful inclination of your head. Please inform His Imperial Majesty that the first spiral forms will be clearly visible by the end of summer. The complete design will emerge over 7 years, with the trees reaching mature expression of their patterns in 15 to 20 years. A moment of silence greets this honest assessment. You sense the secretary's discomfort before he speaks again. The Sultan had hoped for quicker results. The Persian ambassador visits in autumn, and His Majesty wished to showcase this garden as evidence of Ottoman superiority in the botanical arts. You smile slightly, accustomed to such tensions between royal expectations and natural processes. Inform His Majesty that while the complete form requires years to perfect, we will employ special techniques to create a visible beginning that will impress even Persian eyes by autumn. The initial spiral on each tree will be established with decorative copper framing that serves both functional and aesthetic purposes. This compromise seems to satisfy the secretary, who takes his leave with formal thanks. As his footsteps fade, Ibrahim moves closer to speak privately. The Sultan grows impatient with slow methods, he murmurs. The new gardeners from Italy have promised geometric topiaries within months rather than years. You nod, understanding the implicit concern. Court fashions change. Traditional Ottoman arts compete with imported European techniques that promise faster, more dramatic results. Yet you remain confident in the superior beauty of the spiral-trained trees, whose forms emerge organically through cooperation between gardener and living wood. Quick results fade quickly, you reply. Our trees will still grow in splendor when those Italian topiaries have withered from excessive cutting. Besides, you add with a slight smile, the Persians already have elaborate topiaries. They do not have spiral trees that dance without being mutilated. With the planting complete, you turn your attention to the initial training process. Each sapling must receive its first guidance system, the critical foundation upon which years of growth will build. For this delicate work, you rely on Mustafa, your most promising apprentice. Bring my guidance kit, you instruct him. Mustafa returns with a wooden box containing your specialized tools, copper wires of varying thickness, strips of soft cotton, padding, measuring cords with knots at precise intervals, small ceramic weights, and your prize set of silver shaping instruments designed to your specifications by the palace metalsmith. You select a cherry sapling near the center of the pattern and kneel beside it. Observe carefully, you tell the gathered apprentices. The first guidance establishes the mathematical foundation of the spiral. Mistakes now will amplify as the tree grows. With measured movements born of decades of practice, you begin the process of initial spiral training. First, your fingers explore the sapling's trunk, inch by inch, identifying its natural tendencies and stress points. Then, you apply strips of cotton padding at calculated intervals to protect the tender bark from the guidance wires. The spiral must follow the divine proportion, you explain as you work, each turn widening according to the sacred ratio of 1 to 1.618. This creates harmony that pleases the eye because it reflects the mathematical order of Allah's creation. Though you cannot see the proportions, Your fingers measure with perfect accuracy, placing each component of the guidance system according to calculations you perform mentally as you work. The gentle curve of the copper wire, the precise tension that suggests rather than forces direction, the subtle reinforcements that will support the tree as it begins to adapt to the spiral pattern, all emerge from your hands with confident precision. Too tight, and the tree rebels, growing deformed or dying, you continue your instruction. Too loose, and it ignores our suggestion, returning to straight growth. We must find the perfect balance between guidance and freedom. One of the newer apprentices, a boy recently arrived from a provincial town, asks hesitantly, "Master Kadir, how do you know the spiral is forming correctly if you cannot see it?" An older apprentice hisses a reprimand at the insensitive question, but you smile, gently. "A fair inquiry," you reply. "The spiral exists first in here," you tap your temple, "as perfect mathematics. My hands follow what my mind sees clearly. But more importantly, the tree tells me whether the spiral is forming correctly. Living wood speaks through tension and resistance. My fingers listen to its language. As the day progresses, you establish initial guidance systems on several key trees, demonstrating variations appropriate for different species. Cherry requires a gentler initial curve than plum. Apricot needs more substantial support during its first spiral turn. By late afternoon, when the muezzin's call to prayer echoes across the garden, you have completed enough examples for the apprentices to continue under Ibrahim's supervision. You rise stiffly, your aged joints protesting after hours of kneeling work. "Tomorrow we will begin the decorative copper frameworks," you announce. "For today, ensure each sapling receives proper watering. Not too much, as we want the roots to seek depth." Mustafa assists you back to your quarters, where you refresh yourself before evening prayers. As you wash the day's soil from your hands, you reflect on the project just begun. The Sultan's celestial garden represents perhaps your final major commission, a culmination of knowledge accumulated through a lifetime of spiral training. After prayers and a simple meal, you receive an unexpected visitor. The soft knock at your door is followed by the distinctive scent of aged parchment and ink that identifies Hassan Effendi, the palace librarian and astronomer. "Master Kadir," he greets you warmly. "I hope I do not disturb your evening rest." "Not at all," you respond, gesturing toward a simple cushioned seat. "What brings the keeper of knowledge to my humble quarters?" Hassan settles himself with a slight rustle of robes. "I observed your work on the celestial garden today. The mathematical precision was remarkable." You incline your head at the compliment, waiting for him to continue. "It occurs to me," Hassan says carefully, "that your knowledge of spiral training exists primarily in your mind and hands. Have you recorded your techniques for future generations?" The question touches a concern that has increasingly occupied your thoughts as age advances. "Some basic principles are documented in the gardener's manuals," you acknowledge. "But the more advanced mathematics, the subtle variations for different species, the philosophical underpinnings, these remain largely unrecorded." Hassan leans forward. You sense his increased proximity and hear the earnestness in his voice. "The Sultan has authorized me to compile comprehensive records of all palace arts and sciences. I would be honored to document your knowledge before—" He pauses delicately. "Before I join my ancestors?" You complete his thought with a smile. "A worthy concern. Knowledge that dies with its keeper is lost forever." "Precisely. With your permission, I would assign a scribe to work with you whenever convenient. You could dictate your techniques, your calculations, your understanding of the relationship between mathematics and living growth. The proposal intrigues you. Though you have trained many apprentices over the decades, you recognize that certain aspects of your art remain difficult to communicate fully, particularly the mathematical principles that you visualize so clearly in your mind, but that others struggle to grasp. I would welcome such an opportunity, you agree, though some concepts may require more than words to convey properly. The scribe is also a skilled illustrator, Hassan assures you. Perhaps you could guide his hand to create diagrams that reflect your mental images. Thus begins a parallel project to the Sultan's garden, the preservation of your lifetime's knowledge. 3 mornings each week, before beginning your work with the trees, you meet with Talib, a young scribe assigned by Hassan. Patient and intelligent, Talib quickly grasps the significance of what you share. Describe again the relationship between the spiral's expansion rate and the tree's growth rate, he requests during one session. The spiral must anticipate growth, you explain. Each turn widens according to the divine proportion, but also according to the expected thickening of the trunk over time. For a cherry tree, which adds thickness gradually, the spiral expansion is calculated at 1.618 times the previous turn, plus 1/10 the diameter for each year of planned growth. For a cypress, which grows more slowly, the calculation adjusts too. As weeks pass, your dictated knowledge fills dozens of pages. Talib reads each section back to you for confirmation, occasionally asking clarifying questions that help refine the explanations. When words prove insufficient, you guide his hand to draw diagrams representing the mathematical concepts you visualize internally. Like this, you say, your hand over his, moving the pen in precise arcs and angles. The first spiral turn establishes the pattern. Each subsequent turn must maintain perfect mathematical relationship to the first, even as the tree adds thickness. Meanwhile, work on the Sultan's celestial garden progresses steadily. By midsummer, the initial guidance systems on all 40 trees are complete. The copper decorative frameworks, functional art that both guides growth and creates immediate visual impact, gleam in the sunlight, already suggesting the spiral forms that will eventually emerge in living wood. The saplings respond well to their guidance, new growth beginning to follow the suggested patterns. You inspect each tree regularly, your sensitive fingers detecting minute changes in tension, subtle shifts in growth direction that indicate how the living wood interacts with your guidance system. This plum resists slightly on its northern side, you tell Mustafa during one such inspection. Adjust the tension here, reduce by 1/4 to prevent bark stress. Your apprentice makes the correction, then guides your hand back to feel the improved balance. Better, you approve. Always listen to what the tree tells you. Force nothing. As autumn approaches, the garden begins to attract attention from palace officials and visiting dignitaries. Though the trees are still young, the combination of their careful placement in the celestial pattern and the elegant copper frameworks creates an impressive display. Court poets compose verses comparing the spiraling saplings to dancers frozen in graceful motion, to visual echoes of the stars they represent. The Persian ambassador's visit, the event that prompted the Sultan's concern for quick results, proves a diplomatic triumph. Rather than dismissing the young garden, the ambassador spends hours examining the mathematical precision of your design, particularly impressed by the relationship between astronomical positions and horticultural arrangement. Your master gardener has created something we have not seen in Isfahan, he tells the Sultan, according to reports that filter back to you. These trees dance with the stars themselves, The Sultan, pleased with this response, summons you to a private audience, an extraordinary honor for a gardener, even one of your standing. You are escorted to the imperial hall by two silent guards, your walking staff tapping lightly on marble floors that echo with centuries of Ottoman power. In the Sultan's presence, you bow deeply, awaiting permission to rise. Master Kadir, comes the imperial voice, younger than you expected, vibrant with the energy that has driven Ottoman forces to recent military victories. Your celestial garden has impressed even Persian eyes, it seems. Allah blessed our efforts. Your Imperial Majesty, you respond with appropriate humility. Tell me, the Sultan continues, his voice moving closer, suggesting he has left his elevated position to approach you directly. How does a man who cannot see create beauty that astonishes those with perfect vision? The question seems genuinely curious rather than challenging. You consider carefully before answering. Perhaps, Your Majesty, because beauty begins not in the eye, but in the mind's understanding of divine order. The spiral follows mathematical principles that exist whether seen or unseen. My hands merely translate these eternal truths into living form. A moment of silence follows, then a sound that might be appreciative laughter. Poetically stated, Master Gardener. You speak like a philosopher rather than a cultivator of trees. In the highest gardens, Your Majesty, the two disciplines become 1. The Sultan asks several more questions about the garden's development timeline, the special care requirements of spiral-trained trees, and the meaning behind specific elements of your design. You answer each inquiry directly yet respectfully, explaining complex horticultural concepts in terms accessible to a non-gardener. As the audience concludes, the Sultan makes an unexpected pronouncement. Your knowledge must be preserved, Master. Kadir, I'm told you work with Hassan Effendi to record your techniques. This pleases me. When complete, this document shall be bound in leather from my personal collection and placed in the Imperial Library. You bow again, deeply moved by this recognition. Your Majesty honors my humble work beyond its deserving. No, the Sultan replies simply. I merely ensure that beauty outlasts its creator. This royal endorsement accelerates your work with Talib the scribe. What began as occasional morning sessions expands into a comprehensive documentation project. You dictate not only technical aspects of spiral training, but the philosophical and spiritual dimensions that give the practice deeper meaning. PR. Spiral represents the soul's journey to Allah, you explain during one session. It circles back upon itself, yet always rises higher with each turn. Unlike the simple circle, which merely repeats, the spiral progresses while remembering its origins. This is why our trees are not merely decorative, but spiritually significant. Talib's pen scratches rapidly across parchment, capturing your words. And the mathematical proportions, he prompts. They reflect divine harmony, you continue. The same proportions appear throughout Allah's creation, in the arrangement of leaves around a stem, in the structure of certain shells, in the patterns of seeds within a sunflower. By training trees to grow in these sacred proportions, we acknowledge the underlying unity of creation. As winter settles over Istanbul, work in the gardens slows. The young trees enter dormancy, their externally visible growth pausing until spring. This seasonal quiet provides opportunity for deeper documentation of your knowledge, particularly the advanced techniques that will become necessary as the celestial garden matures. You dictate detailed instructions for second-year adjustments, for managing branch development within the spiral pattern, for calculating support requirements as trunks thicken. Talib faithfully records everything, occasionally reading back sections to ensure accuracy. During this period of relative calm, you also focus on training Mustafa, preparing him to eventually continue your work. Though younger gardeners often rely heavily on visual learning, Mustafa has developed remarkable tactile sensitivity under your tutelage. He has learned to see trees through touch as you do, to detect subtle tensions and growth patterns that visual inspection might miss. The trees speak to us through their resistance and yielding, you tell him during a winter training session in the dormant garden. Visual beauty is merely the outward expression of internal harmony. A truly beautiful spiral tree feels right beneath the hand, balanced, resolved, at peace with its guided nature. By spring, when new growth begins to animate the celestial garden once more, your manuscript nears completion. Talib has organized your knowledge into systematic chapters, beginning with basic principles and progressing to the most advanced techniques. Hassan Effendi, reviewing the work, pronounces it the most comprehensive treatment of spiral training ever compiled. As promised, the Sultan commissions a special binding for the completed work, leather-dyed imperial blue, with silver clasps and corner protectors. The title, embossed in gold, reads, "The Mathematics of Beauty, the Complete Art of Spiral Tree Training," by Kadir Effendi, Master Gardener to Sultan Murad IV. A formal ceremony marks the manuscript's placement in the Imperial Library. Though court protocol would typically exclude a gardener from such scholarly proceedings, an exception is made for you. Standing before an assembly of court officials, scholars, and fellow gardeners, you present your life's knowledge, bound and preserved for future generations. Through this humble work, you state simply, may the art continue when these hands return to dust. With the documentation project complete, you return your full attention to the celestial garden. The trees, now beginning their second year of training, show promising development. The initial spiral guidance has succeeded. New growth follows. The established patterns naturally, requiring only subtle adjustments rather than fundamental correction. Over the following seasons, you guide the garden's development with patient hands. Each tree presents unique challenges. Some grow faster than expected, requiring more frequent adjustment. Others develop strong branches that must be integrated into the spiral pattern. A few suffer storm damage that necessitates careful healing and redirection. Through it all, your fingers remain your eyes, detecting problems before they become visible to sighted gardeners. Your mathematical mind calculates adjustments with precision that astounds observers. The celestial garden gradually emerges as perhaps your greatest masterpiece. 40 trees dancing in spiral harmony while mapping the heavens above. 5 years into the project, as the patterns become clearly established in living wood rather than supportive copper, you begin to train Mustafa in the removal of initial guidance systems. This delicate process requires perfect timing. Too early, and the trees might abandon their spiral growth. Too late, and the guidance materials could damage the thickening trunks. Feel the bark here, you instruct, guiding Mustafa's hand to a section of cherry trunk. The spiral has been internalized. The wood fibers have reoriented to this pattern. The tree now believes the spiral is its natural form of growth. Mustafa carefully removes the copper guide wire and protective padding that have shaped this section for 5 years. The trunk maintains its perfect spiral curve without support. Living, wood permanently transformed by patient guidance.